the stories that drive our economy and shape our world. Up ahead, investment approvals by the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, or Peza, surged nearly 4 times in September compared to the same month last year. Government borrowings jumped 40% in August, driven by higher domestic debt issuances. A Cebu-based fuel retailer sets its initial public offering for November. We'll dive into Topline's expansion plans and industry outlook with the company's president and CEO, Eric Lim. And talk about humility. Forbes' richest Filipina, the heiress to the SM Empire, Teresita C. Coson, is spotted with no entourage, blending in with other passengers while waiting for her luggage at a local airport. First, let's take a look at how markets in Asia are faring as we start the new trading week. So far, it's a mixed performance in early trade. Japan's Nikkei 225 is down 1.8% as the yen strengthened sharply following Shigeru Ishiba's surprise win, which raised expectations of higher interest rates. South Korea's Kospi is moving sideways with a slight upward bias, while Australia's ASX 200 is up by more than 0.5%. Over on Wall Street, U.S. futures are flat with futures tied to the Dow Jones and S&P 500 and NASDAQ showing modest gains. All major U.S. indices are coming off a third consecutive week of gains, sending the blue chip Dow Jones to a new all-time high. This follows encouraging August inflation data, with the personal consumption expenditures price index edging up by just 0.1% in line with market expectations. Over in Europe, main indices continue to ride a China-led rally from last Friday, with luxury stocks leading the way. The UK's FTSE 100 gained 0.4%, while Germany's DAX climbed 1.22%, and France's CAC 40 gained 0.6%. Over in the commodities market, oil prices are slipping as investors weigh expectations of higher global supply against fresh stimulus from China. Brent crude is down 0.2%, trading at $71.86 a barrel. Meanwhile, gold is up 0.2% to $2,663 an ounce, heading towards its best quarter in more than 8 years. Now, the Philippine Economic Zone Authority approves 54 billion pesos worth of new and expansion projects in September. This represents a 285% increase in approvals compared from 14 billion pesos a year ago. The year-to-date total is now at 115.89 billion pesos, reaching 58% of Peza's 200 billion peso target for the year. 8 projects are in export, manufacturing, 5 in IT/BPM, and 2 in eco-zone development. Borrowings, government borrowings, rise 40% in August on higher domestic debt issuances. Data from the Bureau of Treasury shows that national gross borrowings reached 174 billion pesos last month, up from the 122 billion in the same period last year. Month-on-month borrowings declined by 8% from nearly 190 billion in July. Gross domestic borrowings jumped 42% to 167 billion in August, while external borrowings rose by nearly 5% to 7 billion pesos due to new project loans. Year-to-date total borrowings increased nearly 17% to over 1.9 trillion pesos. Rising borrowings could put more pressure on the government's finances and increase our debt costs. In other news, banks continue to miss the mandated quota for small business loans in the first 6 months of the year. Data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas shows loans extended by the entire banking sector to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, or MSMEs, reached 488 billion pesos. This is only 4.5% of their 11 trillion peso loan portfolio, well below the mandated 10% quota for MSME lending under the law. Lending to micro and small enterprises was 196.7 billion, or just 1.8% of their loan portfolio. Loans to medium enterprises, however, reached 291 billion pesos, accounting for 2.7% of the total loan portfolio, exceeding the 2% quota. MSMEs are crucial to the economy, employing millions of Filipinos. Limited access to credit hinders their growth and thus their economic contributions. Now, elsewhere, China's central bank orders banks to lower mortgage rates on existing home loans before October 31st. This is part of a series of stimulus measures to revive their crisis-hit property market and boost consumer confidence in the world's second largest economy. Commercial banks must reduce interest rates to at least 30 basis points below the loan prime rate, the central bank's benchmark for mortgages. This move is expected to lower mortgage rates by about 50 basis points on average. China's property sector, once a pillar of their economy, has been in crisis since 2021 after a regulatory crackdown on high leverage among developers triggered a liquidity crunch. Here's a quick look at some key data releases coming out this week from all around the globe. First up, we have the Philippine September inflation figures, which will be out on Friday. Economic managers are hoping inflation fell to 2.5% from 3.3% a month prior. Elsewhere in Asia, China's factory activity data drops. Investors, however, might overlook any weak results after the country announced a big stimulus package last week to boost their struggling economy. Over in the United States, we'll get the latest employment figures on Friday. Economists expect around 145,000 jobs to have been added last month, slightly up from the 142,000 in August. Over in the UK, they're set to release their second quarter GDP data, but it's unlikely to sway the Bank of England, which remains concerned about stubborn pockets of inflation. Now, and the Eurozone's inflation numbers are due out on Tuesday. It will be closely watched as the European Central Bank decides whether to cut rates again in October. Inflation may have dropped below their 2% target for the first time since June of 2021, thanks to falling energy prices. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line.
Hey.
It's only been, what, 2.5 days, 3 days? Yeah. But we're just so thrilled to have our own little bundle of joy, and be able to spend some precious times with him as he slowly starts to grow up.
Welcome back to Basis Points. Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened just a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at those initial figures. Right now, we're seeing the market succumb to some selling pressure. The PSE index is down by 0.3% to 74.02. All shares index down as well, down by 0.2% to 39.61. Now, losses in the financials, holding firms, services, and property counters are being offset by slight gains in the industrial and mining and oil counters. Now, at the foreign exchange market, the Peza opened stronger from its previous close of 56.08, opening at 56.03 against the greenback. Now, Cebu-based fuel retailer Topline is set to launch its IPO this November, targeting to raise 2.87 billion pesos. Proceeds will drive the rapid expansion of its retail operations in the Visayas region and fund new growth initiatives. And as the energy landscape continues to evolve, the company is strategically positioning itself to stay ahead of the trends. Now, leading the charge here is Eric Lim, the president and CEO of Topline. He joins us in the studio today to share his insights on the company, the market, and more. Okay, Eric, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, good morning, Maiki. It's a pleasure being here, and good morning to your viewers.
Okay, Eric, let's start with an overview of Topline. You guys started the business earlier, but it was only in 2017 that you got into the fuel retailing business. Can you talk to us about this shift?
Well, actually, we actually celebrated our 11th year this year. So when we started this was 2013, we were really into the mall development and real estate industry. And then we saw the potential of, since we're also operating our wharves, our ports, so we saw the potential of different tanker trucks refueling the ports, and then we said we may have to enter that industry. So by 2017, we entered the industry, and as the years progressed, we were able to basically check the different supply chains. And right now, we're forwardly integrating into retail, into the retail business, which is light fuels, and backward integrating into depot operations, and hopefully we'll be importing soon.
And now fuel is your core.
Yes.
And with a particular focus in the central Visayas region. Yeah. Talk to us about your IPO. People are curious about this. Tell us, I mean, you're still up for regulatory approvals, but, what can you tell us broadly speaking?
Okay. Well, right now, as what you mentioned, we're still seeking regulatory approvals. We're hoping, we're still crossing our fingers to get that soon. But if you look at the scenario of the listings, especially in the Visayas or even in Mindanao, I think the last one that listed was probably Cebu Landmasters. This was a few years back. But if you look at the listing post-pandemic, for the province, it's basically, hopefully, if given the chance, it will be Topline. And it's basically one of the first listing post-pandemic for the province. So these are things that we're just quite, passionate about.
What were the conditions that you really took into consideration before, expressing your plans to go public in the fourth quarter of the year?
Well, actually, it's always important to plan ahead, certain milestones. But when we started planning the listing for Topline, we actually started pre-pandemic. And right now, since we saw the potential of, especially in Central Visayas, it's a growing economy. In fact, based on the numbers, because there's an industry study, it's an independent industry study from UANP. Actually, Central Visayas is about a 1 trillion economy. So, but you have to take out Negros, Oriental, and Siquijor. But if you're looking at Metro Cebu and Bohol alone, it's actually a 1 trillion economy. And in terms of GDP growth, Central Visayas is about 7.5%, and this is for 2023. And the national average is about 6.5%. So we're just building on that momentum moving forward.
Right, and Central Visayas, that's your core. But what about your future, 5 to 10 years from now? Where do you see yourself in terms of your geographic footprint?
Well, when we do certain focus group discussions or strategic planning, it's always on the table in terms of expansion. We would want to expand to other markets. But right now, our core market is still Central Visayas. We would want to tap that underserved market, which is we're looking at a niche strategy. And in fact, if you look at the growth in Visayas, it's been quite spectacular for the past few years. And for now, we're just looking at probably the two-wheeler and the light vehicle approach, which is our niche strategy right now.
Talk to us about the breadth of your operations right now. What is your portfolio at present, and where do you plan on taking it?
Well, aside from not sleeping, no. So right now we're just quite happy with the team right now. As what they say, it's always the people behind the company that makes it great. But in terms of different delegations of work, so we have basically my sister Bridget Lim, our COO, and then Attorney Maiki is also part there as our CFO. So we just have a very good blend of talent in the group. And moving forward, we also got a lot of people from the industry to guide us.
What about the footprint of your operations at present?
Right now, so we have to dissect it into different dimensions right now. So we have the bulk distribution, which is going to be, it's a B2B approach. We deliver business-to-business approach. The other one for the business would be the retail approach, which is the expansion of the light fuels segment. So right now for light fuels, we're not only expanding into bigger footprints, but we're now scaling down. Since if you look at the different landscape, let's say if Metro Cebu, Metro Manila, it's actually quite different if you make it a little bit more compact. So now we're targeting about probably about 500 square meters or even less to make sure that when we expand, it's by volume and we're near to the market. Mm-hmm. So this is quite different because I think the question there, Maiki, would be what sets us apart from the different giants in the industry? And I think for us in Topline and light fuels, it's basically it's a different strategy in terms of niche market because we're targeting the motorcycle segments and the light vehicles. And in fact, if you look at the data right now, again, this is based on the industry study. There are actually about 11.7 million vehicles being registered right now. And in a national scope, about 58% are motorcycles.
Mm-hmm. No? Yeah, there's been a rise in that. As with a rise in that, there's also been a rise in the demand for electrical vehicles. Yeah. How are you, a fuel retailer, strategizing in order to capitalize on that market as well?
So right now, we always it's always important to check on certain trends in the industry. Well, you know what they say, the trend is your friend. So right now, when we incorporate light fuels, this was during the pandemic, 2020. We actually called it Light Petroleum Corporation. And then when we had I think it was in the lockdowns, there were a lot of talk about electric vehicles and then what's the industry moving forward. So we said to ourselves, how about we changed the name to make sure that we're at par with the industry and the trend. Instead of Light Petroleum Corporation, we changed it to Light Fuels Corporation to make sure that we can also accommodate certain fuel sources in the future. So right now, our stations are actually future ready, so it can accommodate different kinds of fuel sources such as EV. In fact, our stations also have it's part of our ESG. It also has a solar panel on top. Okay. So these are things that we're quite passionate about.
Okay, let's talk numbers. I know you're still going for regulatory approvals, and you can just give estimates, but please give us estimates on, how many shares are going to be offered, the price per share, the valuation. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well, as what you mentioned, we're still in seeking regulatory approvals. Hopefully soon. We're still crossing our fingers. But in terms of the pricing, it would depend on when we finish the different milestones in the listing. And at the same time, in terms of number of shares, I think for the company, we're offering about 30% of the company. And That's
the free float.
Yeah, the free float. And about another 10%, 30% plus 3% for the over-allotment.
Mm-hmm. How much do you plan on raising for your maiden offering?
Well, we're still checking as to when we get the regulatory approvals, so we'll get back with you on that.
Okay. What are you going to do with what you raised from the IPO?
Well, as what you mentioned earlier, it's really basically into different kinds of integration in the mix. So right now, we're doing forward integration, backward integration. So what we want to do now is to basically make sure that we have enough capacity to support the market. And at the same time, with that capacity, we also have the different assets on the ground, such as fuel tankers, oil depots. So it's basically a vertically integrated approach to synergize with the Topline ecosystem.
Okay. All right. Now, given the margins in the fuel industry, they're notoriously low at about 1% to 2%. It's a volumes game. Yeah. Can you talk to us about how you'll reconcile a potential 10 billion valuation given these tight margins?
I think it depends on your growth strategy as a company. So in terms of our if you look at the numbers right now, I think this was, if you compare it from first half of last year and the first half of this year, where we grew in terms of top line about 15%, and our net income is actually about 191%. So our margins are quite healthy for the industry, and we're hoping to carry that momentum moving forward.
Okay. Last question. Why should investors invest in Topline with the future trading symbol TOP?
Yeah. Well, I think it always depends on your track record as a company. So you would have to check what kind of industry they're in and what's the growth strategy involved. So, well, it's basically how you see the market and what are the people behind it. So what's their direction for the company.
All right. Thank you so much for your time this morning,
Yeah.
Eric, and good luck to you on your maiden offering.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Maiki. Good morning.
All right. In other news, India has finally allowed the export of non-basmati white rice to resume. This comes as local supply in the world's biggest rice exporting increases, with farmers preparing to harvest new crops in the coming weeks. India's decision is expected to boost global rice supplies and ease world rice prices, pressuring other exporters like Pakistan, Thailand, and Vietnam to lower their rates as well. A government order set a floor price of $490 per metric ton for non-basmati white rice exports, just a day after New Delhi slashed the export tax on white rice to zero. This latest move to lift the export ban follows a series of actions to ease restrictions on premium aromatic basmati and parboiled varieties. Now, before we go, true wealth lies in humility. That's exactly what Forbes' richest Filipina and heiress to the SM empire, Tessie C. Coson, showed at an airport in Iloilo. The SM Investments vice chair was spotted at the baggage carousel, casually waiting for her luggage, just like any other passenger. C. Coson was checking her phone with no entourage or assistants in sight. She was reportedly in Iloilo to attend a board meeting for one of her companies. And that's it for Basis Points. I'm Maiki Oreta. We'll be back tomorrow for more news on the financial markets and more. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.
How would you like to see our problems with Pogos end?
And the Pogos.
Would you consider running for office in the future?
It would be hypocrisy to say no.
It is.
At that time, how much was your first pay?
If I'm not mistaken, it was like $120 per week.
Oh, wow. So before we say goodbye to you, you can take off your sunglasses so people can see you better. Always stay at the forefront.